Welcome to the official podcast of DogsDaily.com, a Sports Illustrated channel.
Gets to the edge. Sonny Michel will send the Dogs home to the championship game.
If you're looking for the latest Georgia Bulldog news in football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting, then you're in the right place.
Anthony Edwards hit the jam. Are you kidding me?
Hosted by Dogs Daily writers Jeremiah Stoddard, Kyle Funderburk, and Jonathan Williams.
Here's a pitch. Hit high out into right center with some carry. It's got a chance. This ball is out of here. Tucker Bradley has won it.
Just sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for these hot takes you're about to listen to.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, for another episode of Classic City Sports. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard along with Jonathan Williams. We're excited for another fun off-season episode for you. It's going to be an action-packed episode this week. We've got commenters already going. It's got me laughing, so we'll get to those as we always like to do throughout the show. But today's going to be a good one. Obviously, everything with Matt Luke went off this week, so that's going to be something we have to talk about, right? Mm-hmm. We got our normal segments of talking season and the hill you're going to die on. This one's going to be a little different. Jonathan has a different approach to it this week, so it should be pretty fun. I haven't been given all the information of what it is necessarily yet, so we're going to see how it goes.
Going for a raw reaction this time.
Raw reaction. We like to try to do that. It's fun. Obviously, baseball season just got started up too, though, so we'll kind of throw in some baseball talk this week, along with, we'll beat the dead horse a little bit of Georgia basketball as it comes to the end of the season. I think the last game is on March 5th, I think you said earlier. Yep. So almost over there, 3 games left, and then we can kind of move that program forward, hopefully. But we'll go ahead and jump straight into it. As you can see with the title of it, it's the new normal of college football. It's because some stuff has been happening lately that has definitely showed some of the things we're going to start seeing in college football. With that being one of the big things, obviously, be some things similar to the Matt Luke move, right? So Matt Luke all of a sudden decided to retire. Mm-hmm. And his comments are that he wants to go be a dad. He wants to go spend time with his kids and be a part of that, and can just dive into like why that's something now. He got into coaching a long time ago, right? Like
23 years.
Yeah, he's been in coaching a long time. He knows how it is. He knows how it is to be, raising a family through that, starting a family, doing all of that there. So he's used to that, but something's changed now. So that's obviously why somebody like him would decide to retire. So dive into that for us real quick.
I mean, you just have to think about how much the game has changed since he entered college football coaching 23 years ago. I mean, It's changed a lot. Recruiting rankings, you got 5-star rankings. You got everything you could ask for in regards to recruiting. And then now you're throwing in NIL deals. Players are making money. And it's just it's like what we've talked about on here before, is that it's just created a lot of chaos in college football. Kirby Smart has touched on it before. And what Kirby Smart touched on after the national championship game in his interview with Reese Davis, he talked about you're going to see a lot of coaches that are going to be getting out of college football because it's a lot to handle right now. You're going to see them go into the NFL. And in this case, you're going to see guys like Matt Luke, who have been in the game and in the business for a long time. And they're going to go be a dad. They're going to be spending time with their family because, as Kirby Smart put it, you don't have time with your family right now. You are doing this. You are doing work. You are doing some type of effort for your team at all times, whether it be phone calls, texting, going to visit people, putting in hours at the office, whatever it may be. It's a lot on your plate, and it's a lot to deal with, and it's only going to get crazier as time moves on. And so I think this is just a sign of Matt Luke's like, all right, like, got a national championship with these guys. I did my best with UGA, but I think it's time, at least for now. They did say that he'll still be in Athens. He'll kind of be involved with the program still a good bit, but he doesn't want to be as involved as he would be as offensive line coach. So he wants to go be with his family, wants to go be a dad. He's got kids, he's got a wife, and he wants to be a part of that. So you can't blame a guy for that, especially, like we said, where college football is at nowadays.
Yeah, and it's drastically different from when he started coaching himself 23 years ago, like you said. So it's something that all of a sudden it makes us sit here and go, is this going to be the new normal for a little while, where you start seeing coaches of that type of caliber all of a sudden decide, this is just, it's not what I originally signed up for. I've been in this game for a long time. maybe they're getting a little bit older because they've been in it for so long, and they're like, one, I don't have the energy to do this, or two, I've got a family. I want to be able to spend time with them. I need some time, protected time every year, that you could get in the NFL level or something, and actually be able to sit back a little bit. But even if you were to go to the next level outside of like having a true off season, it's a very different like dynamic of like you don't have all of the recruiting to do. So you just coach your team. You have the players that you have, the game plan that you have, and you coach that as much as you can. And so it's a lot of hours spent in film review and all that kind of stuff there. But you don't travel to go see, high school students constantly, and in the off season and all year long, and having to sit here and recruit like that, because I mean, they don't have to recruit. It's you get to have whoever you want in the draft. Like if they're available, you pick them. Like that's your guy. You don't have to do this convincing them to come play for you and stuff like that, unless it's like free agency. But that's also for a very small period of time in the NFL.
I mean, it's what you saw with Dan Mullen. He was kind of testing the waters with the NFL. It seemed like every offseason.
Yeah.
And he may not have outspokenly said this or anything, but it had to do probably with, one, he made it clear he didn't really particularly like recruiting. He was not a fan of that. It wasn't something he was willing to put the effort in. And it seemed like college football just kind of died off for him. Like he kind of lost his passion for it, and he lost his drive to build like a successful program and be the best that he possibly could be. And the reason for it, and why you saw him like being in the talks of going to the NFL, being a head coach in the NFL, had a lot to do with that, probably in the fact that he doesn't have to do that. And he just gets to call an offense. He gets to call his offensive plays. He gets to have his team. He gets to coach them. And he doesn't have to worry about anything else on the outside. He doesn't have to really worry about how much his players are making or if they're satisfied. That's not really his job. There's other people for that in the NFL. His job is to make sure that his team wins football games.
Yeah.
And that's what some people just want to do. They just want to have their teams win football games. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the new norm of college football right now is – if you're going to be in this sport and you're going to be a coach in college football, you better love it and you better be willing to just throw away everything else in your life, because you're dedicating all of your time, all of your hours to that team, to that sport, and to whatever else you're trying to build in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that like I think it's going to take a new generation of coaches to like go through this process from like an earlier on time period to actually get comfortable with it, used to it, and stick through it for 20 years in this type of dynamic and stuff like that. Whereas right now you've got coaches that have been in it for so long, it's this culture shock for them. And it's just, you're going to see more of them leave. Like I promise you, Matt Luke is not the only one, maybe not even at Georgia. Like you might see a coach at Georgia again in a couple years, or, something like that. Not saying anybody on the team would currently do that outside of Luke. It would, but at some point, I'm sure you haven't seen the end of it. You're going to see a lot of coaches that have been in the game for a really long time decide it's just not the same anymore, and they don't love it like they used to because of, whether they have, issues with the transfer portal or NIL stuff, or, just the constant everyday part of it that has become at this point. You're just going to see people start to go, and it is what it is. That there's no harm done at the end of the day when it comes to like, that's what they decide to do. The program moves on. When you've got a head coach like Kirby Smart that has done a great job at hiring assistant coaches, then you don't worry about it. You just, as a fan, you sit back and say, I mean, okay, a position coach left. You still got, your main coordinators outside of, Dan Lanning left this year, but you still have your offensive coordinator. You've got people on the staff that have been around for a long time. So like, it's going to be fine. You don't worry.
Yeah. Let's pull up Evan's comment, because I think this is a good question of his. And it says, do you all think this eventually weighs on Kirby and he steps down earlier than expected? I'm not going to say it wouldn't happen, just because, you never know what the future holds. You never know what could happen, anything like, but I think it's definitely possible that it could happen, because, I mean, if we're talking about how much time and effort, I think over time, if changes are not made, which I think eventually changes will be made, which is why I don't necessarily think that he will step away earlier, because I think changes are going to have to be made. It's becoming obvious that there has to be some type of dead period that needs to be implemented. I know we already have somewhat of a dead period during the year, but you got to have another gap in regards to transfer portal, and even maybe more for recruiting, because again, there's so much time you have to put into this. So I think you'll see some changes made, or at least I hope you do. But if changes aren't made soon enough, I think, yeah, you could see guys like Kirby Smart possibly step away earlier than expected. Maybe after he wins another national title at Georgia, or he wins multiple, he's kind of like, all right, I've kind of done what I wanted to at Georgia. I put in 10 years or so at the University of Georgia. Maybe I want to take this next step to the NFL, or maybe I just want to step away from coaching as a whole. So I think it definitely could play a part in that if changes are not made.
Well, I mean, think about like stuff like this. He's got young kids. You know, his son is really young still.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like my point of it, in 5-6 years, he's going to be in like high school and going through the big moments of life. Maybe he's playing sports and that kind of thing, and you never get to be a part of it. At some point, coaches, it's going to weigh on a lot of coaches like that when they've got younger kids. It'll probably shorten how long people stay in coaching in general.
Well, just take Will Muschamp and Mike Bobo, for example. They're both at the University of Georgia, partly because they want to be at the University of Georgia, but also both of them have kids at the University of Georgia right now. They want to spend time with their kids in Athens. Jackson Muschamp is on the roster, and then Mike Bobo's son recently just got added to the roster as well as an offensive lineman. So you want to spend time with those kids because that's prime time. Like, you don't get to watch your kid play football for much longer, especially considering Jackson Muschamp and Mike Bobo's son are not necessarily the next first round pick in the NFL draft. So you want to soak up as much as you can. So if Kirby Smart does get to that point where maybe his kid is like the next big thing in high school, or he is the next big college recruit, that possibly could change things. And like I said, especially if changes are not made in the NCAA in regards to how they go about their business now, what an offseason looks like, then yeah, I think it definitely could factor into people's decisions and whether or not they want to keep being a head coach or even being in college football at all anymore.
Yeah, or maybe you start seeing a lot more stuff like that right there where Muschamp and Bobo are going to the colleges and are going to the same places that their kids are going to be playing and stuff like that. That way they get to be a part of it, but they're also still in the coaching world because that is their life at the same time. It's one of those things that, like, you'll still have guys in the league that'll go the distance like Nick Saban has, right? Like that has been around forever and is probably going to be around forever. Like, you'll have guys like that just fall in love with even this type of college football that we currently have. They'll fall in love with it enough that it is just their passion. So they're okay with the everyday part of it. And you'll have people like, their family life might struggle, but they'll figure out a way to deal with that because it's that important to them to be a part of the game. So you'll still see those, but you're going to see a lot, I think, shorter careers because of all of this too. When they get into coaching in their 20s, think about these guys that start as like grad assistants and stuff will start building their time up. And if they're in it from, 22 years old, 24 years old through, 40 years old, whether or not be as a head coach at that point or still a coordinator or whatever it is, they've spent so much time in the game. Like, they're going to be just flat wore out in general. And then also they've missed so much at home. If they did start a family during all of that, you're going to see people want to step away.
And I think Nick Saban is one of the reasons why I think that changes are going to be made, because Kirby Smart also touched on, they kind of asked, like, what do you and Nick Saban talk about in the offseason? Like, do you talk about, like, the national championship? Do you talk about your past games? Like, oh, well, what did you do in this game? And he said, no, we really don't talk about what happens on the field and during the offseason. What we really talk about when we're on the golf course and we're just kind of chit-chatting or whatever, we talk about how can we improve the game of college football. And I think when you get and Kirby Smart made it clear that he's worried about the direction that college football is going in, which means Nick Saban probably is too. So when you get guys like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban that are becoming very outspoken about their worrisome of college football, I think that's going to put some pressure on the NCAA. Like, okay, like, we got to keep these guys around. We have to have guys like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban in our sport. And so when they're kind of putting pressure on you that, hey, we think changes need to be made, I think that's kind of why I think changes will be made, because it's inevitable at that point. You can't be losing guys like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, because then it's just going to create a domino effect, and everybody's going to be jumping ship at that point.
Yeah. And it's just going to start to completely mess up, like, the quality of game that you get because the coaches like that are the really good coaches. And those are the ones you need to stick around in a competitive thing like this. So, but it's one of those things that the game is changed drastically. I think there's been some good changes. I think they just need to start to moderate, like, certain moves and certain things that happen. Like, as far as the transfer portal, I mean, it is what it is. They can only do it once without sitting. I think that's fair. I don't think they really need to change anything with the transfer portal unless they just change, like, the time frame that you can enter it and not just, like, literally whenever. That'd be the only thing maybe they narrow down when that is. That could help coaches be able to not have to worry about, basically free agency at that point during that time of the year or something. They can actually wait until, a month later. So it kind of shortens that kind of thing. But as far as the NIL stuff, there needs to be a lot more adjustments and a lot tighter rules on that, because you have people going out here and starting businesses, like creating an LLC and funding it so they can pay a player X amount of dollars. And the NCAA, I think somebody was saying they commented on everything, and I basically tried to line out like what it's supposed to be like, where you're not supposed to be like NIL deals aren't supposed to be tying you to the school basically, or like playing time and stuff like that, right? But they obviously are.
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers is a perfect example of that, because there had to have been something on that, kombucha deal.
Kombucha, baby.
Kombucha. There had to be something on that deal that said, hey, you've got to be playing, which I also understand from a business perspective of like, if you're going to spend $1 million or however much on your marketing for something, like if he's not playing, it's going to mean nothing. So like, I understand why businesses might look at it that way, but at the same time, it's not fair for college football to basically say you will get this only if you come to the school. I'll basically give it to you just for coming.
And the good news is that the NCAA does not have a commissioner like most sports do, but in a sense they do. It's Greg Sankey if it's anybody. And the good news, and why I say that's good news, is because the two people that we named was Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, who have like verbally said their concerns about it. Is they're in the SEC. So if anybody's going to make a change, it'll probably be the SEC first. I think there definitely is going to be changes to be made with the transfer portal within the SEC, mostly directing towards players being able to transfer within the conference and being able to play immediately, which you saw quite a bit of this last offseason from Georgia with Latavius Burney and some other guys going to Florida. So I think those changes will be made. And when the SEC does that, typically other conferences, especially in the Power Five, are going to follow suit and do the same thing. So if the SEC starts making changes and Sankey wants to make changes to the offseason and say like, all right, we're going to have some dead time during this period, or we're going to change this about the transfer portal, we're going to change this about the NIL, then you can kind of really start to see kind of like a revolution within college football. So I don't think it's necessarily like detrimental to the college football right now, just because change is inevitable, I think. And the sport's going to continue to change just like it has within the last year. I mean, so much has changed during that time span, and it'll continue to change, but hopefully for the better is what you can hope for now.
Right. And change is inevitable, but growth is optional. So like the game can still grow, and people can, like fans can grow and just be a little bit more open-minded about certain things of it too. Like I understand the game has been this way for so long, and all of a sudden adding these changes may not be appealing overall, but there can be plenty of good that comes from it. I think that it is really good that the players are able to sign NIL deals. I think that's a very important thing, because they should be able to make money off their own name, image, and likeness. That part is no brainer to me, right? I also really think it's a good thing to be able, these kids to be able to transfer places in general, without necessarily having to sit right away, and not be able to play. Because these guys are making these decisions at 18 years old, or prior to being 18 years old, 17 years old sometimes. So yeah, maybe they get on campus and it's not a good situation for them. Maybe there's a lot more stacked in front of them on the depth chart than they expected it to be, and so they don't think they're ever going to crack it. I don't think it's called quitting if they decide to leave because of that. I think they're trying to make a decision based on what their future needs. And if they're fourth on the depth chart, yeah, they could stick around and crawl and fight their way back up, but maybe they have very limited time to start by the time they actually can do that. You got to understand, these things are good for the game in general and good for the players that are the reason there's even a game. And so I think there's a lot of support to be given.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that the fans are not obligated to putting in as much time as coaches are in college football, and you have downtime. And a great way to spend that downtime is with college baseball right now.
That's
Obviously,
right.
MLB does not have their crap together. I shouldn't say the MLB as a collective unit. Obviously, I'm for the players. So whatever the players want, they need to be given that, and wherever they need to go ahead and settle this, because you and I both
spring training's not happening. Yeah, not anytime soon.
You and I both are huge baseball fans, so we, especially after coming off a World Series championship for the Braves, you want that season to get started as quickly as possible. But a good time to fill it with, and something that people need to be devoting more time to, is college baseball. College baseball is a blast. It doesn't get a whole lot of attention. I think part of that is to do with like you can't really track baseball recruiting like you can football. Like it's kind of weird, and unless you really understand the game of baseball, it's not something where you can just like look up this player, see who's recruiting them. You don't have crystal balls or anything like that. You have websites like Perfect Game who give them a grade, but you got to pay a subscription to see the rest of it and stuff like that. So it's a little hard to follow. But even if you don't follow recruiting, Georgia baseball, to be in particular, they have a great team this year. College baseball in general has a great atmosphere, especially when you see schools like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and those guys out there just having
that's a wild experience.
It is absolutely
cool.
insane.
I like watching those.
It's
games.
just so unique because you don't get that in the MLB. It's kind of like college football atmosphere. You don't get that in the NFL.
Yeah.
Well, college baseball atmosphere, you don't get that in the MLB. Like you don't have people literally throwing beer all over the place every home run, and you don't have like – it's just ridiculous. And Georgia has a great atmosphere as well. I went to the game on Friday. They completed the sweep this last week against Albany up from New York. And then yesterday they played – or was it yesterday?
Yesterday they played Wofford.
Yesterday they played Wofford, and they beat them as well. So they're 4-0 on the season already, and they look really good. They have a good group of players. They got a last year they had a little bit of – they kind of lacked maturity in a way. They were kind of young.
Yeah, young, especially on the pitching staff.
Lost a lot of key guys,
Yeah.
Cole Wilcox, Emerson Hancock, a lot of really good players. So they were kind of rebuilding in that sense, kind of beefing up the roster a good bit. But they have a good group of players this year. They got guys like Jonathan Cannon on the mound, who's really good, MLB prospect right there, pumping in the low 90s, got a really good fastball, great changeup, can change up the speeds on you. And he had a great game against Albany as well. And you just got guys hitting nukes out there. Corey Collins hits them. Josh McAllister hits them. Ben Anderson has 2 on the season as well. So these boys can rake, and they can dot them up on the corners as well at the plate. So it's just a great team, and really it's a great way to spend your off season as well, because we know basketball, boy, that was a doozy. So now you got baseball, and it's really something people should buy into.
No, yeah. College baseball is like none other. Like you said, the environment is just different. It's not like it is when you go to MLB games. MLB games are a blast. There's 40,000 people in there. But it's crazy how much energy and stuff you can see from like 5,000, at certain college baseball games and everything like that. So it's definitely something that's fun to watch. I mean, I'm excited to see what they can put together this year. Like you said, they've got a little bit more maturity at pitching. Jaden Woods pitched yesterday in relief. I think he threw about
He looked good in both of his outings.
Yeah. In both his outings, he looked pretty good, and I think he had 7 strikeouts in 3 innings.
Some Ched, man.
Yeah.
That dude brings the heat.
So he's having a great performance so far. Jonathan Cannon, I think he went 6 innings and 2 or 3 hits.
Yeah, he had a
no
really
earned
solid
runs.
outing.
So he had a great game. I know it's like the lower level teams right now, but in college baseball, those lower level teams will have some studs. Baseball is different than other sports. You can have MLB players on teams like that. Mm-hmm. So, and there are players like that on those teams. So it's fun to watch. No matter who they're playing, it's always a fun game to pay attention to. And I'm excited to see their hitting was a little bit slower this year to start so far. They're having a little bit of a struggle there, but like we talked about earlier, baseball is just different. It takes a little bit to get going. Sometimes you got to start seeing those live pitching, at bats, and to start really just feeling the atmosphere of the game at the same time. It's such a mental thing, and just you got to see it. And so it just sometimes takes a little bit. So we'll see how it goes, but I think it's going to be a fun one. Make sure you go out to at least one Georgia baseball game. They're cheap too.
Yeah, and plus, there's not a bad seat in Foley Field either. That's another great thing about college baseball is that everybody's close to the field. It's you have a great view from anywhere that you sit, and like you said, tickets are pretty cheap. And they just started selling beer there as well. So if you're into going and drinking a beer and enjoying baseball, one of the best things to do during the summertime, you can go do that at Foley Field now too. Now, something I like to do personally, I like sunflower seeds at baseball games. So, what's your go-to sunflower? If you eat sunflower seeds, what's your go-to flavor?
I like the ranch ones are always really good, or like a barbecue. Like one of those two is probably my go-tos.
See, you and me are just too much alike. Literally, barbecue and ranch, they just never disappoint. It's just I literally went to the store today because when I went to the game,
how did we
I don't
agree
know,
on that?
but I went to the game on Friday, and I told my roommate who was there with me, I was like, dude, I need sunflower seeds. I should have bought some. So I went to the store today because I'm going again on Friday, and I bought me some ranch sunflower seeds. Now, it was the only flavor that they had at the store, but I mean, you really can't. There's so many great flavors. I love dill pickle ones too. I don't know if you're
those are shockingly good.
They are.
They're
when I played high school baseball, that's what we had in the dugout, and man, I would go.
That always made the inside of my lip go numb though.
Oh yeah, it sucks after you're done, but man, they're so good. I just go for handfuls at a time, and it's just a great way to waste time. And I don't know, it's just something about baseball. You got to have sunflower seeds, in my opinion. It's just such a great pairing.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that's always good. But anything in baseball games just tastes
Yeah.
better, right? The peanuts taste better. Like
Hot dogs. I
yeah.
don't know, something about a ballpark hot dog. It's just so much better. Like the atmosphere just makes it taste better or something like that. I don't know. Beer always tastes better too. So, oh man. But I guess we can transition now into basketball because while we're not necessarily going to talk about where we are at in the season, just because still at one SEC win throughout the
Still
season.
beat Alabama.
Still beat Alabama. You can you can hang your hat on that. But the rest of the season has not gone too well. You only got, I think it's 3 games remaining. Like we said, they finish up not this Saturday, but the next on March 5th, and then they go into the ACC tournament as the bottom seed. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe they pull some strings or make some magic happen and they do something crazy. But I don't necessarily see that happening. But basically, Tom Crean has a job for the next week and a half, and then his buyout drops off, and that is when it
drops to what, $3.7 million or something.
Yeah,
like that. It cuts it in half.
Yeah, and so it takes a dramatic drop off, and so now you have the ability to finally cut your ties with him, and you get to make the next step forward. And there's kind of been some names, of course, thrown around in the head coaching process, and one of them is Forbes out of Wake Forest, which
I saw that.
Honestly, I've kind of been doing my research about it, like just kind of reading up on these guys. I don't really see Forbes leaving Wake Forest, to be honest, because the ACC and college basketball, they're a premier conference.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you got Virginia in there,
It's
Duke.
a good place to be.
You got a lot of good schools in that in the ACC, and Wake Forest this season is having a great year. I think they are second in the ACC right now. They're on a tear right now with Forbes. So I don't really know that Forbes would leave Wake Forest, somewhere that he's already like
not if they're at that level already.
Yeah, like he's kind of already built up that program, and he's got them where he wants them to be. So I don't really necessarily see him leaving that job to come to Georgia and have to really start from the ground up.
But think about what we talked about the other day, like in the Twitter space when we did that the other day, and we talked about who's going to want to come to Georgia and be a coach right now.
Yeah.
Why would he want to leave Wake Forest when he's a tournament team this year? Like he's a tournament team, and he's going to come to a team that had one SEC win? Because I don't think they win one of these next 3 games.
But one name that I did think was very interesting, that I think this one could be a legitimate hire, and I saw this one on Twitter today, is Dennis Gates, and he is currently at Cleveland State, so like a lower tier college basketball program. But he's they started in his first year with him. They went 11-21, but in the last 2 seasons they went 19-8 and 19-7. So he's kind of built up that program. He's done a good job with that. Someone that could be looking to make the jump up to like a school like Georgia. And I think it's someone that you could be willing to give a chance on as well. You know, we've talked about Jonas Hayes. We've been beating the Jonas Hayes drum since last offseason.
Literally, like this time last year, we were saying Jonas Hayes. That's the funny part, is now that like if you can't even get on social media or Twitter, if you're on Georgia Twitter, you can't get on there without seeing somebody make a comment about Jonas Hayes.
Yeah, there's tons of
We've been on this for a long time.
Pictures about it. So I think someone like Dennis Gates, someone like a Jonas Hayes, and I said this also, is that maybe you aren't necessarily looking for your home run hire right now, but you take a shot on a guy like Dennis Gates. You take a shot on a guy like Jonas Hayes to at least build up your program, get them back to where at least Mark Fox left them off at, where you're getting 19, 20 wins a season.
Where you're a fringe tournament team.
Yeah.
Or at least an NIT.
At least you can get there. And so then maybe at that point, if you're like, okay, we can try this again, you're back where you started before you got with Crean. Now you really go after another hire, and you see how it works out at that point. So maybe you don't have to necessarily go after a guy like Forbes from Wake Forest, someone that is proven at a major program in college basketball, but you can get a guy that's up and coming. And if it works out, then great. Maybe you spent a little less money on him as well. You don't necessarily have to pay him this huge amount of money like you did with Crean to have him come to your program. You maybe got to pay him a little bit less than you would anybody else. And then if he gets you a great program and he's recruiting really well and you're being successful, then that's even better because it worked out for you in the long run anyways. But I think the goal now is at least get someone that can get you back to where you were before Crean, because I know that we all wanted more with Georgia basketball. We all wanted them to take the next step, and that's what we all hoped Tom Crean would do, but that's been a failure. So
that was what he was supposed to do.
And so, and at this point, any upgrade is
anybody.
Good. Yeah.
Anybody
other than Crean at this point.
At this point, I just don't like him, like on several levels.
Yeah, he's made some crude comments that we haven't been too fond of. We won't get into that, but just kind of continuing to throw players under the bus. saying that.
Well, just this week. This week, he decided to leave after he got done with an interview on a Zoom link. He left it on and got caught like talking in the background, and people's media members were still on the call. And he's sitting here talking about, throwing a player under the bus right there in that same comment, but also just basically saying one of the assistants, he called somebody by name on there, and I'm not even going to even repeat names, and just said that they're the reason that this stuff is getting out right now.
And interesting enough, the player he was talking about just became the program's – he's now 5th in program history for assists. So it's kind of ironic that he makes comments like that, and then you see an accolade like that pop up for the player. So it's just past due. It's obvious that
it's just not working.
Yeah, there's a lot of friction there. There's a lot of people that aren't happy. There's been some other issues too within the coaching staff where you've kind of seen some things. There's a video that kind of went viral on Twitter within UJ basketball. It's clear that there's issues and that this just needs to be settled, kind of clean the house, not necessarily with players. I think there's a lot of players that really I would love to see stick around. Speaking more specifically to like Cario Oquendo, who put up 33 points the other night. I think that's something like you want players to stick around, but in regards to like coaching staff, just hit the reset button and let's get something like just clean house and let's get something else building and going and building up some momentum as well.
Well, and it's like what you said, like when we first got Tom Crean to come to Georgia, right? Like when he first got here, the hopes were that he was going to elevate the program. We talked about this, right? Like the whole point of getting rid of Mark Fox and getting a new coach was to elevate the program to a next level, which when that team had an invite to the NIT tournament that year, the last year that Mark Fox was here, that means like elevating the program means you should be in the tournament. And with basketball coming on a program that was already winning fairly well, he should have been able to be in a tournament no later than the third season.
Yeah, now you aren't
later than the third season.
Now you aren't even in the conversation for the NIT. Like you're not in the conversation for any postseason events, tournaments, anything like that.
Is it SEC basketball where all the teams make it, or is it the 12 out of 14 make it? I can't remember. I always get baseball and basketball confused as far as like how the SEC tournaments work.
Everybody makes it for basketball.
That's what it is. And in baseball, I think it's the top
everybody
12.
gets a shot for.
So they'll make tournament play.
Yeah, they get to play
for that one
game. And like I said, like maybe you get to see another miracle happen, like what they had. I think it was the year 2008, where they were kind of like a lower seed, and they just went on an absolute tear and ended up making it all the way to the end of the tournament. I don't know if that's in store. Maybe it is. I mean, they hung in close with Auburn. They beat Alabama, and they've kind of hung in close with some other teams. But at this point, it's just writing's on the wall. It's time to pack your things up, get out of here, get out of town. And Georgia basketball desperately needs a new face and a new head coach.
So bad. So I mean,
it's really bad.
It's going to be interesting to see who comes in next because, like you said, at this point, I don't think it really matters who it is. To be honest with you, somebody.
Yeah.
And at this point, with the program being where it's at, I think this is the exact time you take a chance on another coach that is not necessarily proven and somebody that you're giving a shot to because it can't get worse. And like you said, you let it worst case scenario, like with that, like if they're good, maybe they become the next great coach, or maybe you have them for 4 or 5 years. They bring the program back up to a general area that was at least close to where Mark Fox had it or right where Mark Fox had it. You can gain
that attraction again to get a bigger name in the business like you were able to with Tom Crean.
Exactly.
So just kind of get back to that level at the very least. I think that's kind of
the least.
I think that's the next step for UJ basketball is get back to that level and then kind of reevaluate yourself, reassess, and see if you want to take that next step forward or just keep it rolling with the guy that you have. But we'll roll into our next segment. We have some talking season topics, actually, so we're going to do that first. We're not going to start up King of the Hill just yet, but we do have two talking season topics, and really these are just kind of in good fun. Like one that I had, and I'll pull it up right now. I sent it to Jeremiah, and it came from our good friend Big Boomer. I think that's his name, right? Isn't that his name on Twitter? Big Boomer, whatever it is. The Oklahoma fan. Let's see. Pull it up on Twitter. I thought I texted it to you. All right. So he did a whole he does like these huge list rankings. If you don't know who he is on Twitter, he always releases like his personal or she. I don't know if it's a he or she. So we'll just say they release these long lists of rankings. And this week it was the 2022 best college town rankings. And typically there's kind of some shade thrown at UGA in
especially
these lists.
with his lists are always like that.
They are clearly still salty about the Rose Bowl, and it's become quite evident. But this time they actually did Athens specifically some justice in this one, and they ranked Athens as the third best college town in all of America. But listen to the people that are ahead of them.
One of them makes sense. The other one I can't.
Madison, Wisconsin.
That's the one. And that's number one, too.
Add it to your list of places you need to travel to.
Apparently.
Madison, Wisconsin. Add it to the bucket list. And Boulder, Colorado. So the University of Colorado and Wisconsin as well. Very interesting. It's not even like – typically you think of like teams in the SEC or at least like the southern region for like best college towns. Now, Athens, I think, is the best in America. Now, I'm somewhat biased. I live in Athens right now, but I mean, you have the most bars in like
a single square
mile. Yeah, like per square mile or whatever.
One single square mile. There's like 100 of them.
Yeah, there's
literally like 100 of them.
Tons of them. You have tons of like the campus is just beautiful in general. You got a great college atmosphere as well. Football games, you name it. Great student atmosphere. Like the campus, like having the arch right there, right on Broad Street. It's just and they're kind of doing some renovations right now, so it is kind of trashy looking a little bit. But nonetheless,
yeah, that's because they're repairing things.
Yeah. So, I think I'm kind of intrigued now. I want to make the trip to like a Boulder, Colorado, or a Madison, Wisconsin now, just to kind of see like what gives them the edge over a UGA or even like I don't know, like any like an Ole Miss, I guess, or something like that. You know?
Yeah. I mean, you could make reasons for like Boulder, Colorado. Like a lot more as far as being fun. Well, there's that. But then there's also, they're living in a place where people travel to for vacations to go skiing, snowboarding, that kind of thing. So like college students might enjoy being somewhere of that, but at the same time, it's also really cold. Yeah. So there's a trade-off there.
So I guess that's why you got to drink to stay warm. I guess you got to hit the liquor cabinet or whatever else, and you got to keep your insides warm since it's so cold outside. But
Wisconsin, I can't.
I don't understand Wisconsin at all. I like we said, we could kind of understand Colorado, why that could be a lot of fun to go visit.
Out.
But Wisconsin, I don't know that there's much in Wisconsin. But now I'm intrigued. Maybe randomly one day, if I'm ever in that vicinity, I'll go hit up Madison, Wisconsin, and see what all the hype is about, or at least according to Big Game Boomer or whatever, we'll see what all the hype is about. But then we had another one that our friend Harrison sent us. And this one was just kind of funny in general, like not necessarily throwing shade to this person, but it comes from Facebook. If that tells you anything, you can always find some funny and intriguing things from the UGA message boards on there from Facebook. You got some people that are a little bit outlandish with their takes, coming in hot. And as Jeremiah pulls that one up, it was centered around Matt Luke and how he was basically getting at that there is a culture problem in Athens because
it's UGA a Georgia fan too.
It is a Georgia fan, yeah. It is a Georgia fan. And they were just basically saying, like, why are all of our coaches leaving when Alabama doesn't experience this many coaches leaving, but UGA has had – what are the numbers he put in there?
So he said that he said Saban lost 7 coordinators, defensive or offensive coaches, and 7 assistant coaches in 14 years. That's 1 per year. But then he pulls up talking about Kirby, and he says Kirby has now lost 5 coordinators and 17 assistants in 16 years. The coordinators that he loses, 9 times out of 10, they've been promoted, and so it's just movement for their career development.
Yeah,
and that's normal, and that's what you want. That means that they're leaving a good program, and they've shown that they've done a good job. So like that's not a problem at all. But also at the same time, they didn't break it down. I wonder how many like have been for Nick Saban losing in the recent years rather than like longer in his career. You're saying 14 years. You really should just narrow that down to the same time period that Kirby Smart's been a head coach for 6 years and just go with those numbers because that'll be a more accurate representation of this time frame. He may have only lost a couple people in the first 7 years, but then the last 7, all of a sudden he lost more coaches.
Plus you have to take into account when Kirby Smart got into the head coaching business as well.
Yeah.
We talk about how roster movement is at a peak right now. Coaching staff movement is at a peak right now as well. You see tons of staff members jumping around as well. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the people that Kirby Smart has been hiring in the past. Like Nick Saban has Bill O'Brien right now. That's not necessarily someone that's going to be jumping ship after 1 year and they're going to have to replace after another.
That's also a guy that's been in the NFL and stuff. And yeah. It's like he's on it's different. Each individual coach is a different scenario.
Yeah, and Kirby Smart, especially when you're kind of starting out, you typically get a lot of younger guys with you, guys that you were close with. Guys like James Coldy, for example, who was your offensive coordinator, who only stuck around for a year, and then he went over to Texas A&M. Guys like Shane Beamer, who weren't around too long, and now he's a head coach at South Carolina. Then you also had like people from Mark Richt's staff, or not necessarily Mark Richt's staff, but you had like people like Mel Tucker who are on the fringe already of becoming a head coach, and he jumped ship and he went to become a head coach as well. So I think it also takes into account the people that Kirby Smart has on his staff versus who Nick Saban has on his staff as well. And plus, that's just kind of been the norm for Alabama in general. Like Kirby Smart was at Alabama for, I think, 8 seasons. And then he was able to just typically the coordinators over there tend to stick around for a little bit longer. I don't know what it is, but I think it's just in general, you have to look into like the guys that UGA has on staff, like a Dan Lanning, for example. Like that's a guy that's obviously trying to make a run to become a head coach. Guys like Jamal Adai, who are clearly trying to keep climbing up the totem pole to become a defensive coordinator or possibly a head coach as well. So it's all based around that. And I think Kirby Smart knows that when he interviews him, and he understands like, okay, this guy probably won't be around for long, but I think it's just all about your schematics and how you go about who you're hiring and whatnot. And Nick Saban's been around for a long time as a head coach, so he may not necessarily do that when he's hiring people. He's probably looking at different things when he's looking to hire people.
Yeah, for sure. And you want these younger coaches getting chances to move up, and stuff like that. So you shouldn't feel bad about somebody like Dan Lanning getting to be a head coach at a Power 5 level, as a first-time head coach. Like you knew that was coming. You had him for a couple of years. But with that being said, Kirby Smart had people in place for that defense. So once Lanning was gone, he was prepared to hand the keys over to somebody internally at that point. That's what we're seeing at this. So it's not everybody leaving is a bad thing for that reason. Yeah. Dan Lanning was incredible, but he's got some great defensive minds still on staff, including himself, to kind of make up for that in the meantime while they may build up another younger name or something like that. So you just kind of have to see how that's going to go. But then also it's not always a bad thing, because sometimes if it's a position coach and they go somewhere else that might be lateral or other things like that, maybe things just weren't working out in Athens between Kirby Smart and that person, or maybe they weren't doing, something the way that they wanted it done. For the better of the program, maybe somebody else would do better in that position at that time. So it's not always bad.
Nope. So, all right. I think we've kind of talked about everything in regards to that. And we'll conclude talking season for this week. We'll continue to do this segment, like we said, for the oncoming weeks in the off season. And we're especially going to keep doing this one because I've had a lot of fun doing this one. So we're entering another segment, third segment of our King of the Hill portion of the episode, which if you don't know what King of the Hill is, it is your opinion that you're willing to die on a hill defending. And this week we're going to do a rapid fire. We're going to do multiple topics, but we're going to rapid fire it. And you've seen it on Twitter or you've seen it on social media in general, but it's one has to go. So if you're not familiar with this, you kind of put maybe 4 food items, 4 video games, 4 whatever, and you say one of these things has to go forever, and you get to keep the rest of them. So for the first one, chocolate chip cookies, sugar cookies, peanut butter cookies. Which one are you kicking out the door saying get out of here? I'll stick with the other 2.
This is going to be the unpopular opinion. I would probably say chocolate chip in that spot. I would probably rather the sugar cookie and a peanut butter cookie.
No, thank you. Chip. Sugar cookie can get out of here.
All right, but what kind of sugar cookie are you talking about? There's different kinds of sugar cookies.
It's just a sugar cookie.
Sugar cookie and
it's just a sugar cookie.
Cookies are low key really good.
No. Morgan,
yes, thank you.
Chocolate chip.
Thank you.
She is confused because Morgan loves chocolate chip cookies. I don't know what. I think you're confused.
She just sided for me.
You're choosing the one that you never get to eat again. So she would not pick chocolate chip cookies. I'll go ahead and tell you that. Because I love peanut butter cookies. My mom made them all the time when I was a kid, and man, they are so good. Sugar cookies are just kind of lame to me. Like if I'm eating a cookie, I want to have a chocolate with it. I want to have a peanut butter with it as well. Sugar cookies, it's just kind of lame, man. I wouldn't be missing out too much if it was just a sugar cookie, So I'm a rock with – I'll kick out the sugar cookies. All right, next one. Steak, crab legs, ribs, or fried chicken? He's doing a raw reaction to this, by the way. So he hasn't
I don't know.
So
there's one that I know, and these are not the ones that I know.
He's got to do some thinking before he speaks out.
Honestly, I'm going to get rid of crab legs because I don't eat them in general. I just never really have. So the rest of it, ribs are I can, take, but also at the same time wouldn't be that big of a deal.
Yeah, crab legs can go because while it is good, you have to do so much work to eat them to begin with. You're breaking out a sweat just to get a little chunk of meat out of the crab leg to begin with. And seafood in general, I can indulge in shrimp or whatever else. But crab legs to me, they can go. I don't really care too much about those. But if you're saying fried chicken, Dean, you need to move up north, bro. Like, just get out of here. If you're kicking out fried chicken, then you obviously do not belong in the state of Georgia, where we literally come from a city in Georgia where it is a law where you cannot eat fried chicken with a fork. It's not allowed. It is not allowed where we are from. You literally have to eat it with your hands, and it is a law that you have to eat it with your hands and not a fork. So, Dean, that's a clown take for you, sir. Fried chicken definitely it's a Southern staple, dude. You got to keep it around. All right, the next one, hamburgers, pizza, tacos, or wings. This one's hard. I had to think long and hard about this one.
Honestly, probably going to get rid of a burger.
You going with the burger?
I'm going with the burger.
Yeah, I was torn between pizza and burgers, honestly. And like, I love Mexican food, and tacos are so good. Like, and there's so much you can do with it. You can get steak tacos, chicken tacos, a good chorizo taco is good as well. Like, tacos got to stick around for me. So yeah,
tacos were the ones that I was almost like I was kind of on the fence with, but because I like Mexican food a lot. I don't eat tacos as much when I eat Mexican food though. I like chimichangas and other things. Yeah. So I'm a little more hesitant on tacos in general. But the reason I ended up going with burgers because tacos, there are a few that are just like unreal how good they are. So
yeah, wings definitely got to stay around.
Burgers are good, but I could not eat a burger again.
I think I'm going to go with pizza, though, on this one. Just because, just because for me, like, Italian food, like, I can kind of get some similarities of pizza, like a calzone kind of type of thing. I think I could do it. Like, dude, I'm telling you.
I eat so much pizza.
Burgers are so good. Tacos, you can't, like, and wings, like, dude.
Wings, you couldn't.
I got to kick out the pizza, I think, on this one. It's a tough decision, but I think I got to go with pizza.
Pizza, I love pizza, man.
All right, this one's a little interesting. So, out of these four, like you go into a mall and you got the food court, you got tons of options. And I think these are probably the four most common when you go into a mall. But which is the first one you're hitting up when you're going into the food court? You got Auntie Anne's, the pretzel place, Panda Express, Cinnabon, or Sbarro. Or we can even do just which one has to go out of those four from a food court. Like you never see it again. We'll do that one instead. I think that's better to do with this one.
All right, so if we're doing it that way, say them again.
Auntie Anne's, Panda Express, Cinnabon, Sbarro.
Sbarro.
Yeah, I think I'm going to kick out
the
Sbarro
pizza.
As well.
It's not like once again I like pizza. That's not great pizza in the first place.
Yeah,
and the pretzel place is so good just for walking through. Just taking a couple bites of it's really good. Panda Express is just that was going to be what I said would be the first one I probably went to.
Mm-hmm.
And Cinnabon. I mean, come on, Cinnabon.
I know. Auntie Anne's and
dangerous.
Cinnabon, both of them are
so
dangerous. And at Panda Express, dude, like we have it on campus at UGA.
Yep.
And it is so enticing every time I walk by it in the Tate Center to just go in and go get some Panda Express. So, oh man, another tough one.
I like the office reference in the comments.
You can always count on Dean for an office reference. That's for sure. All right, this is the one.
All right. So is she confused again? Because she's saying Cinnabon can go.
Now look. If there's anything I know about Morgan, she loves her pretzels, she loves her pizza, and she loves her Panda Express. So I could definitely see her saying Cinnabon can go on that one. No judgment there. But this is the one you saw.
Evan.
You ain't got to do them like that, Evan. That gum, bro. All right, so this one's got to go. Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes, Apple Jacks.
That one was easy for me. It's Frosted Flakes, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Frosted Flakes?
Frosted Flakes, I always felt were so overrated. They just,
I don't know, man. I think for me, like growing up, we always like my dad loved Frosted Flakes, so we always had Frosted Flakes in the pantry, but we didn't always have Apple Jacks. So I think I'm kicking Apple Jacks out of this one because Fruit Loops, top tier cereal, Lucky Charms with the marshmallows, got to keep that around.
Yeah.
Frosted Flakes, I don't know. To me, it was just always like something I always had, something I always loved, and like. I'm never disappointed when I eat a bowl of Frosted Flakes. Now I get it why some people. We need to kick Dean out of the chat right now. We need to get him out of here. Right, Fruit Loops are some cheeks. That is a horrible take. Absolutely, as Stephen A. would say, that is some blasphemy. I mean, that is just absurd thing to say.
Oh,
all right. This is the last one.
Okay.
And for me, this is another easy one. All right, but which one has to go? Skittles, Reese's Pieces, and it is Reese's Pieces. It's not Reese's Pieces. It just flows better when you say Reese's Pieces. I don't care what anybody says. Or M&M's.
All right, say it again then. We got distracted.
Skittles, Reese's Pieces, or M&M's? Which one's got to go?
M&M's.
Yeah. I think M&M
because you just gave me Reese's Pieces.
Yeah. Reese's Pieces are really good.
Yeah.
And
Skittles are you can't get rid of Skittles.
Gotta keep Skittles around.
No way.
It's a top tier candy. And like with M&M's, if I want chocolate, like if I just want plain chocolate, I can get that elsewhere.
That's why just M&M's are.
But like, and people may say like, well, you can get a Reese's Buttercup. It's not the same thing as Reese's Pieces though. It's so different. And like, what's really good too is when they say like when they put the Reese's Pieces in the Reese's cup. Man, yeah, literally. So Dean putting this in comment. I'll tell you a story. So like, we have this little candy dispenser in our condo where we stay, and I brought this down, filled it up with Skittles, M&Ms, and like something else. And literally within like 4 days, all of the Skittles were gone. I haven't even eaten any of the Skittles yet. And Dean had just been putting Skittles. I mean, it was like every time he went by that thing, got a handful, and they were gone. So like now I got to keep like a tub of Skittles literally in the pantry because I got to restock them so I can keep my roommate happy and give him some Skittles and plus like I got to buy my own on top of that because Lord knows I'm not getting any from our candy dispenser either. So
all right, Evan, it doesn't matter how it's spelled, okay? It's just
Reese's Pieces sounds so much better than Reese's Pieces. Like you kind of have to sit there and think about it when you have to like when you say Reese's Pieces. I don't know. To me, Reese's Pieces sounds so much better. Regardless of how it's spelled, all right, it is definitely Reese's Pieces. No doubt about it. No question about it. But that's all I have for the One Has to Go segment. I kind of like that. I kind of like the idea of doing a rapid fire, keeping you on your toes too.
Yeah, I didn't know.
I like seeing you think and kind of keep it. And plus, you got to think quick. You can't sit here all day long and keep us waiting as well. So maybe we'll keep doing that. I know we've been staying on food for quite a bit. We started out with sports the first week, and now we've kind of gone into food. But
maybe we'll go back.
Food topics are just so easy to talk about.
Maybe we'll just make a food topic like a mainstay of a different type.
Yeah,
and
maybe so. Because, I mean, everybody has a different opinion when it comes to food, too.
That's probably the easiest place to get us to disagree. Although, once again, we came up with the same sunflower seed.
We did disagree a good bit, though, for the first time during our show. Like, I've never seen us disagree so much. Usually we're just like, we're thinking the same thing, like, and we have the same reasoning for everything. We're just like always on the same level.
We got to argue more.
So that's why I've been trying to think of some good topics that might get us to get us to disagree a little bit, maybe have some differing opinions, and create a more fun conversation because it's boring when we agree. I mean, come on. No one wants to hear like, oh yeah, I agree. Like I think the same way. Like, get out of here. We're trying to get heated arguments. You know,
Evan's got some hot takes in the comments.
Yeah, Evan, Lord, you and Dean both have been hot in the comment section tonight. Lord, I don't know what is wrong with you guys. You guys have had some horrible takes, and I just don't know what to think about you guys. I think I might have to reassess my living situation at home and find me a new roommate because people who say Fruit Loops are trash, there's just not a place for you in the Williams household. I'm sorry.
If you don't like Fruit Loops, how do you feel about like Fruity Pebbles?
Yeah, I mean yeah, exactly. But I mean that's a whole other conversation in my opinion. But that's for another King of the Hill segment that maybe we'll get into another day, another time. But that's it. That's all I got for you for the King of the Hill segment. So anything else you want to add into the conversation, Jeremiah?
No, I think this is a good wrap up.
Okay, well, as always, follow us on Twitter at Dogs Daily Pod on Twitter, Facebook. We got links out there. We always post show links on there as well. Like the YouTube video if you haven't already. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well. And you guys be in the comment section. Like clearly, it makes the show a lot more fun. We get to see you guys' feedback. We get to interact with you guys. It's a lot more fun, and it just helps us out getting our show out to more people, gets more people to click on the video, and puts our link on more people's screens as well. So do all those things. Help us out with the social game. It continues to help us grow as well. And that's it. You can close us out now, Jeremiah.
As always, you guys keep it classy in the Classic City, and we will catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Dogs Daily on Sports Illustrated. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Dogs Daily crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at Jeremiah_Stod7, to Kyle at DK Fubderberg, and Jonathan at 22_Jman. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime, go Dogs!